Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Habiba Idrisi. I'm the Community Outreach Director for the American Association for Arab Women. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today in celebrating Women's International Day. Before I proceed, allow me to recognize the presence of our city's officials, Mayor Gary Christensen, School Committee Member Adam Waldai, and also a candidate for City Council, so good luck. I'd like to also take a moment to thank Mr. Anthony Dickinson from St. Paul's Church for granting us the use of the facility. Mr. Sal Khan for videotaping the event. Mr. Rashid Mukhabir from Zara Magazine. Last but not least, all the members of the AAAW, thank you for the continuing help and dedication. Our program today features 3 distinguished women who will share with us their journeys of challenges and successes while navigating through life. Our guest speakers are Farah Asiraj, an English teacher who is our public school. Sharon Burton, Community Coordinator for the North Suburban WIC Office in Malden with Hallmark Health. Selma Abunadi, Speech Language Pathologist. And in an effort to keep the session as interactive and entertaining as possible, we have our friend Rita Johari running a challenge contest followed by fun facts with prizes for the winners. We will then have an open discussion where you'll get to ask your questions. Finally, the program will end with music performance by Ahlan Saidi and Sumaya Mahmoud. March 8th, around the globe, represents the opportunity to celebrate the accomplishments of women while calling for greater equality. It is also a symbol of struggles that women everywhere have undergone to gain equality and rights, and a reminder for all of us of how far there is still to go. This is the time to uphold women's economic, political, and social achievements and contributions to society, recognize challenges, and focus on women's rights and gender equality to mobilize all people to do their parts, including governments, who need to step up their efforts and make a commitment to identify and address the challenges that are holding women back from reaching their full potential. Gender equality, for example, is not only a social justice, but also a basic human right for women to be able to enjoy a full legal equality and equality of opportunity. And for the girls born today, anywhere in the world, to have the same life prospects as their male counterparts. And for that, we have to work hard, support, and empower women, because by empowering women, we empower humanity. I will conclude my introduction by borrowing a quote said by United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in his message for Women's Day earlier this week. And the quote starts, "When we unleash the power of women, we can secure the future for all." Thank you. I will now hand the mic to Farah, our first guest speaker, Siraj, and please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Can you hear me without the microphone? Yes. Thank you. I'm just going to pause that. Thank you. I'm also a loud talker. So, being a teacher, you kind of have to project and use your teacher voice as much as you can. So thank you all for being here today. Again, my name is Sarah. My family originated from Morocco. Like many of us here, we immigrated under other circumstances that were probably more privileged than many in other parts of the world. And I didn't really understand that until late. I used to think, we all have our struggles, we all have our challenges as people. And as women, especially as women, I think there is an experience that we hand down these experiences in our culture, what we understand to be true about the world and how we nurture our children from generation to generation. And so I think back to my grandmothers and those before them and their grandmothers, and I often reflect on what was their experience, what was their struggle, how much of it relates to what I feel and what I understand about who I am today, and what is it about them that is a part of me, and what is it that I can carry on when I teach my daughter how it is that we sort of survive in this world in a gentle and nurturing way. I think it's really important as women that as much as we play the various roles, that there is a part of us that is intuitive, that is a part of why we are women. It's that we are givers, we are generous, and we are sharers, and that's why we gather amongst each other, whether it's by cooking a meal and feeling that love and warmth through a meal, whether it's by giving a hug in a time of need, whether it's saying those comforting words that really make us connect to our humanness, our human being, our essence. And I think that women use their words and their emotions very differently, I would say, than men, in a way that is healing. The purpose of us really being here and being who we are is that we can share space together that will make us better, right? Not just as people, but that will ground us in who we are, and that collectively there is something that we all share as people. And as women, the relevance of what we do for a living and what we do for a job, and as a wife and as a mother, sometimes it plays a bigger part. Sometimes it plays a bigger role, and there is a balance, there is a difficulty in trying to manage all of what this means. And especially for our new arrivals, for those who immigrate here and have played a different role in their home country, for example. Many women who never had to work because they were a stay-at-home mother, or maybe because culturally they were expected to play, in terms of what the cultural norms are, play a role where they took care of their home, they took care of their children, they took care of the cooking. And that is a very, very important job. And I only wish that more of us would see the relevance in it and who we are today as a community. I wish that we did have more time to be mothers, to be wives, to share in the moments with our sisters and our families. And as a community, how much of that is reflected in what we see in our children, and how they engage with each other, and how as a community they come together. And so as I was thinking about all the struggles and challenges, I always have to think about, what are my privileges? What are my privileges? What makes me feel that in this day and age, I've had so many opportunities, and absolutely we can focus on the challenges and the struggles, but what makes me feel like that I have any more of a right than another woman or another person at that? And I think of those women like my mother, for example, who was not allowed to go to school after the age of 14. She fought hard. I mean, my mother was a fighter. She stood out from the rest of the family and all of the girls and her sisters. And she said, no, I want to go to school. But that's not the expectation of where her family and her parents felt was important and relevant. And that was the choice that was made. And so for years, she had struggled with that acceptance. And so her story, like many other stories of women who were not given those opportunities. So my opportunity, my privilege is education. Education, the fact that my parents immigrated here, the fact that I've had the opportunity to have a free education in a free society, that to me is something that I will not take for granted. And so I've obviously, we have had as we grow and there's a different type of learning. We've had the educational learning in terms of college, right? I've gotten my master's, I've done a Fulbright study, I'm applying for doctoral programs, but that's not the learning that really teaches you how to be a person. That's not the learning that we need to pass down to our students. And so as I transitioned back to teaching this year, after 6 years in administration, I went back to being an English as a second language teacher for high school students, many of whom, actually all of whom are immigrants, many of whom are newcomers, so they had very little to no English, and many of whom have never been to school before. They are students with interrupted formal education. And so I can relate to that struggle because I know my two grandmothers, one of whom has passed and one of whom I'm grateful that she's still with us, are illiterate. Are illiterate not because they didn't want, right? They didn't want to learn, not because they didn't want to be educated, but similar to maybe my mother's path, that was what their experience was, and that was the life that was presented to them. And so when I look at the students that I have, I think of not just gender, because I think there is a different focus here. In the United States, we specifically, we look at different groupings, for example, kind of categorize, this is a gender issue, for example, right? I mean, if it is a gender issue, then it's just as important for the men as it is for the women, right? I mean, if it is a gender issue, and there are issues that are relative to our boys and our men, then the women should play just as much of a role in addressing that. And similarly, if it's the same, and there's an issue that is relative to girls and women, then the men need to stand up and also fight, and the boys, because it's not about that issue, it's about a human rights issue. It's about equality and that humanness that we all should share. And so, as there is such a big focus around our boys, I very often, see the lack of focus on our girls. On our girls. And who mothers, who nurtures, who takes care of our boys? Who?